Hi, okay, we're back. Sorry, Gillian had some problems seeing the screen. So let's try again. Pin comment, and I'm just going to add Gillian. We're talking about the creative process behind our music video Melt, which I'm very about. Let's see if she connects this time.
Yay!
Okay, yeah, okay, good. That would be annoying for you if you're just looking at the screen.
What's going on? Come on. How are
Hello,
you?
I'm good.
Hello.
We're here, we're live.
Nice.
Thanks everyone for coming to our
A
conversation.
press conference.
Press conference as well. So yeah, we're talking about our music video that I directed, and that is Gillian's song and single, and this is the second video we've made together.
Yes, and we made it actually a year ago, but it's only come out just now.
Yeah,
so...
we do. Just one of the many things that come with making things. Often, like, a lot of patience is required for the process, which is always an interesting thing to talk about. How, like, yeah, things take time to develop and come out, and like plans change. I think you've got to be like adaptable when you're making and creating things, especially when
That's
it's like,
literally what my next piece of writing is about: patience.
yeah.
There we go.
So yeah, and for those who don't know, Gillian and I have known each other since we were 11 years old. Yeah.
11, yeah.
So, yeah. So we know each other's work and like processes, and also like how we understand and see the world. I think like we have a understanding of that, which made collaborating and making a video together just like interesting and easy, but also different because it takes you into like a professional side of things too. Like, even though we personally know each other's like personalities and interests, like, it's nice when you actually elevate that to actually physically making something.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what you think about, like, how different it is working with friends versus working with kind of peers and colleagues, and how that all merges together. Because you've been in quite a professional space from quite a young age, haven't you? You've had to like know how to be in that world from when you were tiny. So
yeah, I think it's nice when they can blur sometimes those lines, because it shows that you're obviously like there's joy happening in an idea of like the idea that if you're having fun in your professional environment, like, you're obviously enjoying yourself and there's enjoyment, but then sometimes there are moments where you have to like put on this, you suddenly have to wake up and realize like, okay, something needs doing or something needs addressing, and you suddenly need to put that like away, that sort of friendliness, I think. And I think particularly I found that challenging more so in a director's position, because you are kind of leading the set and the kind of tone of everything that's happening on set. So often you have to suddenly know when to kind of be a bit more authoritative, which
I know
it was really hard at the beginning, because I was like, oh, I don't want to tell people what to do, but I have to, for them also to have confidence that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Because also when it's not in your nature, like, necessarily to be quite authoritative in the way that you operate, it almost has to come through in a confidence in what you're making. So it's like it's through the art making rather than through your personality.
Yeah, and I think through the vision of something, like if you have a strong vision for something, and it's really important too that like everyone on set, from, you know, the cinematographer to the camera assistant to, you know, the props person, like everyone needs to kind of be on the same page as to like what you're trying to create. And I'm always someone who really likes to share that with everyone. Like, I want everyone to feel like included into that dialogue, but at the same time it's that like inclusion of their ideas, because film is collaborative, it's not a single, like, you cannot make it on your own. But
especially when it's low budget stuff that no one's really getting paid for, everyone needs to feel really involved.
Yeah, exactly. But then at the same time know that balance of like when to like finish the idea with your thought. I don't know, it's like a hard balance to being too collaborative, but like someone needs to lead it, otherwise it's kind of chaos.
But then I guess that's interesting in terms of how you go from obviously the what you get on the day, and then there's a whole other process in post where you kind of hand it over to someone else. And a lot of what we did for this one was done remotely, wasn't it? Because actually you had one day in the edit, didn't you, actually in the room,
Yeah, exactly. I think editing and post-production is just like a fascinating process, because you basically have the ability to retell the story again and refine the story. And I feel like you tell the story in scripted work, you tell the story 3 times. They often say, like, you have the writing, you tell the story, you kind of tell it all again when you make the film, and then you tell it for a 3rd time when you're editing. And I think I love that, because often, you know, skilled editors, can really see something from a different, you know, completely intersect the idea that you thought you had so clearly with this like curveball of an idea, and you're like, wow, that's so great. But you have to be ready and open for them to say that, I think, rather than like, no, I only want it this way.
And also, I guess that depends how kind of strict you are in your storyboarding and all of that stuff leading up to it, in terms of how fluid you are with what you get on the day. Because obviously there's always going to be limitations that arise, that you're like, oh god, I didn't foresee that. Or I'm trying to think of even this video of how much was kind of scripted or like storyboarded in terms of shot by shot or shot list. It wasn't too regimented, was it?
Yeah, I feel like the beauty with music videos is that, from my experience, is that there is a bit more freedom, because I think what's more definite is the track. Like, that's your script and that's already pre-existing. So you're kind of playing within that, but the track is there. So that feels almost like your like thematic shot list, because you know you're going through the verses and choruses of things.
Right. There's a cat. Oh my god. What's her name?
This is Selena.
Selena. Her name. Sorry, Selena. Oh, she's so cute.
So yeah, I feel like you don't need a shot list as much, because you're using that as a kind of framework, which is kind of really fun, because it liberates you slightly as a director, because you're already playing with someone else's directing, so to speak. So it's like even more collaborative. So yeah, shot list is not, but already, like, for instance, in this video, like at one point I was tied to this idea that I wanted to do more like still life kind of moments with ice, like actual pieces of ice melting, and on the day it didn't work, and you quickly have to be like, okay, that's not working, let's scratch that idea and just keep moving on. And it's so true. I'd love for people to know about the story behind the song. Someone asked, why is it called Melt, which is a good thing to say. And so yeah, I'd love if we could, like, what was the journey behind the song, and even obviously the collection of tracks together as the EP too.
Yeah, so the song Melt is kind of about dissolving this sense of reality that we have before us, and kind of allowing yourself to give in to something that is not material or tangible, or what you think you see before you. In terms, I'm fascinated with time and memory and all those kind of the weird fluid way that we experience life. And so Melt is just really, it's really that kind of that giving in, and melting and dissolving. Through altered states, it could be through meditation, it could be through playing music, it could be through whatever is your way to get to that space. Also, I used to do a lot of choral singing when I was a teenager. And spaces like that where there's this oneness that you kind of reach with all these voices, and everyone coming together through, obviously for me it's through music primarily. And those kind of experiences really stuck with me as forming my connection to something else. And that's what we were playing with in the idea for the video as well, because that is kind of the dancer and me becoming this one being, and kind of maybe like kind of struggling to start with, and then we break through that dance and that kind of fight with the real world as it is, and dissolve into each other in a very elegant way, thanks to Sapien. Not me, naturally.
And I think that's what was cool. Like, I think for me, when first hearing those lyrics, it's like, it isn't just about like melting into yourself, but melting it. And that's what was so interesting about having the interaction of the two of you, because it was like that, in that kind of, it's not even a conflict necessarily, but that kind of like call and response of like experience and how we react to things feels also like part of it. Like, not only are we like melting into or melting out of like these like rigid kind of structures that we find ourselves in, whether that's time, whether that's like memories, the day, but like also how the two of you like in the movements are this call and response, which I feel like is often like our thoughts and our reactions to them. Like
no,
how
exactly.
that goes back and forth, and like how often our reaction to our thoughts can be like what's trapping rather than the thoughts themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that, yeah, I mean, the mind is just so, it's the thing that brings up the most blocks for all of us, that we stop ourselves from doing so many things, and so in it is trying to get to that place that it's not your thinking mind and not your logical brain, and get into that state of kind of unconscious being. But also it's kind of playing with lots of metaphors of, because I went on this walk with a friend of mine at night, and we walked through London and past all our old like flats, and we were kind of talking through memories and through time, and it was making time into this kind of physical space. And so that's where that lyric, the mind map of the past, and all that verse comes from. So I find it interesting, and also kind of playing with metaphors of like tears and ice on mountains, and all those, the idea of kind of the cyclical nature of nature, and the water cycles and all of that, to build a world that is kind of fantastical. And that's, I mean, a bit what the rest of the EP is about. It's that kind of space of fantasy and the dream world, that is in our everyday, but we don't really access it very often.
And I think, but still music has that ability to do that, to take you to that dream space. I think beyond sound, like beyond any art form, I think has the ability truly, which is wild to think, where you have film, which is both its sound and visual, but I think like still music to this day, like, is so used even for the recalling of memories and tradition and storytelling, and that's like a really lasting way to transport you. And I think you mentioned your experience of being in choral singing and choir, like how does your traditional and like classical training of the piano and violin seep into your work, and how was, like, I've witnessed your that huge arc of transition that you've gone through from being a teenager practicing those things, and obviously since you were like so young, to then playing with in choirs and orchestras, to then playing as a session musician and playing with other people in their bands and their pieces, and then creating your own identity as a musician. Like, it'd be cool to explain like how you got from playing a violin and piano as like a 6-year-old to now.
Well, it's interesting, because I never really thought of music as a career almost, or like as a thing that you could, because I think when you're that young and you're just learning it in such a kind of you see one world, and you see orchestras, and you see classical music and everything, but then once I started realizing that, like with everything, there's crossovers with genres, and there's crossovers with disciplines, and there's a lot more opportunity to use your craft, whatever you've created, but then to apply it to your own life. And it takes a while to get there. I mean, it's only in the last few years that I've actually found a way of expressing myself using all of that training and that learning that I did at quite a young age. Because I guess I felt like I never quite fit in the classical world, and I felt a bit other from it. But then I also, like, I did a lot of playing like you say, in my teenagers and early 20s and stuff with other artists, and I learned so much from playing with other people and learning, you know, meeting other musicians, and I think that's so important, because just to constantly be collaborating, because you're always yeah, just picking up tips and picking up people that you can be inspiring. And I mean, it's the same for you, you know, like for us to all be able to work with friends is the biggest joy ever, you know. And even on this EP, it's like I gathered a friend of mine to shoot the artwork, and I gathered someone to style it, and you kind of build up a network of people that you feel comfortable with, that are going to help realize your vision, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I feel like when people ask often, like, you know, how do you start making films or writing music, and I think it is really finding those people around you who are interested in similar things, or how can you bring in their creative practice. Like, even if you say that, you know, a friend is a stylist, like that, even their relationship to clothes can come into how you're building your identity and vision as an artist. So I think it's always like, there are probably the people that are going to give you your break, often the people that are around you, because they need theirs too. And I think it's just like really lovely also watching people grow, like when they're friends, like you can be excited by like how you're growing together, and people often think it's really far out of reach, like you have to get into this industry, which I think, yes, it is, but I think it also sometimes can be closer than you think, which could just be people who surround you.
I completely agree, because I think it's just about building up, like, I mean, even for you, like you've kind of found a network, you know, even, you know, Arthur, who was the DP on the video, obviously you're friends from before, but there's a kind of joy in making things together, and then you all find a platform for it and grow together, as opposed to, like you say, trying to knock on the door of an industry and going like, what's my way in here? I mean, how have you, I mean, similarly, how have you found like transitioning through disciplines, and what's the creative process look like now for you, like day to day? You've always got something on the go, because obviously you came from also a very creative household and a creative family, so you're always finding new ways to express yourself, and I think that's so important, to not be stuck to one medium, you know. I mean,
for sure. And I think also just being not like, obviously having a career as an actress, and then realizing like, actually I want to go study something else when I go to university, and like that being the first step to being like, oh, I can do something else, and that's okay, that doesn't eradicate or change what's been behind me, that only infers and feeds into it. So just like already accepting that at the age of like, you know, 17, when you're applying to university, like, okay, cool, that's great and fine that I want to evolve and transition to go behind the camera. All this experience is only just like great material. And then even, you know, a lot of people had the same experience. You graduate university and you're like, oh wow, I've been in this like structured world where like everything felt really important and significant, but it was kind of significant because I had these like deadlines and projects and things to like hit, and then you get into this huge open world. And I found it really, those first 2 years after university, I was like totally at a loss of like, I suddenly was like, I didn't really develop my style yet. You know, even in university you think you're developing this style, but I feel like I just graduated when I just felt like I was getting momentum. And then the open world and like how to apply what I'd learned to trying to come to terms with me thinking again, I was like, can directing be a career? And I don't know how I make this a career. And so there was like 2 years where I felt like I just had no ideas, like I kind of got a bit stunned. And then I made a film called Know Thyself, a short film that you came and helped me shooting in New York. And just was like, that happened similarly to how her last music video happened. I was like, okay, I'm leaving New York on this day. I need to make this short film, before I leave. And I forced myself and gave myself some discipline of a deadline. And suddenly it happened and it all came together, but I needed that. And then that kind of, it's developed from short films to music videos to then, you know, the odd commercial, like, so some of the music videos done and the commercials have been more like the traditional process of directing, which is when, you know, a concept can come to the production company or creative agency you're working with, and you basically pitch based on the kind of short brief that they give about what they want for that video or commercial. So then you kind of, you know, pitch and create this kind of anywhere from like 10-20 page presentation on your proof of concept and idea with visual references and, you know, how you envision something. And then they basically choose the director from that pitch presentation. And so there's been a few of my projects that have been through that kind of format. And then I spent like about 1.5 to 2 years developing a feature film script with 2 other writers, Sophie and Julia. And whilst that is still like so there and I want to make it, like everything that's happened with COVID and just the challenging realities of making an independent film, like that's just taking longer and slowing down, which has been fine. And when that suddenly happened, I was like, okay, how can I now not do nothing? Like, how can we keep this like storyline alive but do something? So we made a short film that was based on similar themes of the feature film last year, and I've nearly finished that. That's like be done in the next few weeks. So yeah, just always just like I think you always got to surprise yourself with like changing up your like mediums or how you're applying your idea. And I think just being real with yourself, it's really about discipline. Like you have to have a practice. And
yeah, because what do you at the moment, like what's your daily practice in terms of trying to find or harness inspiration, or what, I mean, what spaces do you find it easiest to get it, to reach it in, you know?
Yeah, I feel like right now I'm in like an unusual time that I've never been in, because I'm in the process of writing a book that's very like, it's more, there's more formula to it than my filmmaking has been, because this experience now of like having a publisher and having my editor, like it almost feels like more closer to having like a boss or being hired by someone, even though it's my concept and proposal for a book. Like suddenly there's a timeline, like I have to hand in my manuscript by May 1st and the photos, but like I have these sudden deadlines. And it's been a relief, to be honest, because I'm like, I just have to get it done. Whereas before I have to have a bit. And so the research I'm doing and the inspiration I'm sourcing through that comes from, you know, reading other books, podcasts, documentaries, you know, researching around the subject, like just a lot of image research is going into it. So, but it's really literal and tangible. Whereas I would say a regular day to day, maybe before this book project, kind of really varied. I mean, the way I look at things is I was call things like an input or an output day or hour. Like sometimes I'm thinking it needs to be like output, I need to write something, I need to come up with an idea, but I just hit a wall. So then I just have to accept like, okay, maybe this is just an input hour and I'm just going to read and watch and go for a walk and just absorb. So I try and like,
that's such a good way of thinking.
Do either way of that. Yeah. Because otherwise I get really angry and frustrated, like when I can't write something, and then that's just.
And then other days it comes so naturally, and you're kind of just flowing.
Yeah.
But not.
I think we're just
to force it too much, I guess.
Yeah, and it's taken me a long time to do that, and I still you know, there's still days where I feel like I'm forcing things, because you kind of sometimes you have to too. I think that's what I've learned a lot in this book, because I have to get it done. Like I'll get to a paragraph and just hit a wall, and I'm like, you know, maybe it's not today that I'm gonna finish this paragraph. I'm like, I have to finish this paragraph. So it's been
that's the beauty of a deadline. I need one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really highly recommend. I mean, like, so the first music video that Gillian and I did together, Gillian was coming out to LA to visit me, and we took it as this opportunity to like, why not try and make a music video? And I think the beauty of that was just like an addition to something you were already doing, so it felt suddenly already relaxed, because it was like, oh, this is just only gonna, like, let's just experiment too. It wasn't too like, you know, I think it's important to do that too, to not have everything be a specific project.
And we worked with what we had, really. It was quite, you know, it was like, okay, we've got a camera, we've got a lens, we've got a car, we've got like your mattress that you're getting rid of.
Oh yeah.
Like, what can we do with this, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't too premeditated, which actually sometimes is the beauty of it, you know, and a lot of that we just kind of spontaneously came up with on the day. You're like, get in the back and sing, and you know, you drove off. And it was
and again, it's like developing those relationships, like Peter, who shot, you know, who DP'd that. It's like finding, you know, you, like, I'd worked on a music video with him before, and like we'd obviously enjoyed our collaboration together, and then you know, you trust each other. So when I posed to him this quite loose idea of a concept to come and just like be a part of and shoot, like, because we've enjoyed working together, it's so lovely when people then put the trust back in you to be like, okay, cool, I'll come along and like we can figure this out and shoot and make something. And that's the same with Arthur, who shot Melt. You know, it's just like, cool, yeah, I'm down. Like, I know, like, there's a trusting, like, part of it.
It's the same with us, you know, like, I gave you the song and just said, here, come up with something. It's up to you. And because I trust that you, not only that you kind of like you say, you understand the backstory of how we've come to this point, but also, you know, it's so nice and it's so refreshing to get your input on something when I've spent so long making something in this little insular bubble with, you know, myself and the producer or whatever, to then hand it over to you. It's like a freedom on my part, you know, because then
and you know that it can be then taken further in the same way that you take me further by giving me material to work with. Like, it's like continuing to further people and to further, I think that's why, in my experience, I mean, I'm not saying that it's like a bad way to work, but when I have worked, particularly as an actress, on projects where directors have been very like woven tightly into their idea and their vision for something, and sometimes they even are the type of filmmakers that are very heavy-handed in the editing process, to me that always seems like limiting, because there isn't, while I get that maybe a maybe more like direct auteur like vision to have, I also just, it seems like limiting that you don't enable just like the amalgamation of how much stronger we are as people together and community together, like how ideas just like get richer, and therefore I feel like more audience members will connect because there'll be many people in that story. Like, when you watch a film, there are, every personality that worked on that film is in that film. Like, when you watch it, you're seeing all the crew, the cast, the everything, because they all touched it, they did something. And I feel like that's when it gets too trapped, I feel like not as many people maybe respond to it as an audience member because they don't see themselves in it, in a way.
But that's actually such a nice way of putting it. But do you think that's kind of specific to, if you've got the limitations of, not the limitations, but the pressure of making like, I don't know, an epic film or whatever, versus the freedom of a shorter form, you know, like a short film, say? I mean, there must be different hoops to jump through or whatever, you know, for any kind of...
for sure. I mean, short films, like, you can also, short film as a term is like so broad. Like, a short film, like a few years ago I made a short film called Medusa's Ankles that was like 20 something minutes long. It was like way longer. We built a whole film set. It was based on a book. Like, that was almost, could have filmed 10 more minutes and that would have felt like a feature film, like the production that went into that. Whereas like the short film I did last year, I purposefully was like, okay, I want this to be like under 10 minutes, really tight storyline. We shot it all in one house. Like, it was, I purposefully was like, I want to make this like much more of a moment rather than trying to develop layers of character and narrative. So you can have so many short films, but the limitations are fun. Like, that limitation was like, it was all set in the house that I had access to, you know? So it's like,
I think also that's the beauty of this time now, which we're finding ourselves in. It's like, there are so many limitations now to what you can create, but there is something really freeing in that as well, because you don't get to go into the big studios and spend money that, you know, isn't there, and you can't collaborate with so many people, but we're finding new ways to tell stories and to create things that we didn't before, you know. And
Yeah, and using the
it's kind of
tools that you
amazing.
have at hand, whether that's like
Exactly.
technical tools of post-production, whether that's tools of writing. Like if you wanted to make a film that was literally one character and a monologue, like you're then having to apply better rules of language or
Exactly.
whatever. Like so you're rather than context of a set or a location. Like I think it's cool in that way that you're forced into these limitations because so much is possible.
Yeah.
Like otherwise it's like that's what I find really difficult. Like when I in Medusa's Ankles we built the set, so it was like where do you want the wall, where do you want, there were like too many, I was like I don't know where I want the wall, like there's good enough. Whereas you deal with a location, like you'd be in this room and you're like okay well the window's there, I can't move the window. But like so limitations are good.
You must get absolutely terrified at having to direct a set, no?
I don't know. I love it. I love having my brain in all the different like departments.
You come into your own, it's true. You kind of, but I think there's a certain calmness that you kind of bring onto set that is really it's a good quality to have.
Okay.
But then, so is that in your degree? Did you actually go into all the different departments? Like, did you study? Was it quite broad, or
it was kind of? It was so fast. It was like 3 years went by so fast. But kind of the idea is like every term semester you basically like take on a different role. So like, you know, the documentary term you could be the producer. In the like TV scripted you could be you could have ended up being the costume designer, or you know what I mean. Like it would vary a lot.
But like you say, it's so useful to have a knowledge of everything to then be able to
for sure.
Identify
I think
with
just the I think interest and curiosity is really what is your greatest friend when it comes to trying to find maybe what element you like to filmmaking or music. You know, if you're kind of like, okay, I know that I respond to this, but like what do I respond to in that? Like, is it directing, is it writing, is it costume, is it you know, in music, are you interested in producing music, recording music? Are you interested in the technical? Are you interested in like how you're marketing an artist? Like, I think it's all just like starts with the curiosity of like asking the questions. I don't know. I think that's what, when I was younger, I was just super like, oh, what does this do? What does that do? Like I was very,
the annoying one on set. Like,
can I touch this button? Everything. Like, no, don't touch that button.
But I think also the amazing thing is that it can change over the years, and like you've shown,
exactly.
You can take on new challenges, and then you can. I mean, it's always evolving, and also now more than ever, even as a musician, you're not only a musician, but you're having to market yourself, and you're having to do this and that, and you're having to do all the jobs of and it's just you just take it all on because you love what you've made, and you kind of
and I think it's a mixture of like adapting to having to evolve because of the reality of something needing to be a career, and like you need to evolve in order to be hired, or it's like evolving because you change, or like the industry changes. Like for instance, like it'd be interesting to talk about how you started, how you're. Did I freeze? I feel like I froze. Am I back?
I think maybe I did. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, just saying how you evolve due to, you either evolve because the industry changes and you've got to change. You evolve because like your career, like you need to be hireable, or like there's different things that happen. And it'd be interesting to talk about, like, I know that you've started, not only obviously you have your music, but how to incorporate your like love for language and writing through your website, and how you've been kind of doing spoken word, like I don't know how to describe it, but like spoken word, like musings in a blog that kind of shows like your interests of that month. And obviously a lot of those things that you may be reading and be drawn to could be accumulating to become a song or become anything.
I mean, I don't know what they're going to be called. There's a blog, I guess, but like that is about to start coming out, but I started just by my newsletters kind of just to give everyone information about music that's coming out became way too long because they just ran. So I was like, okay, this is not going to work. They have to they have to be turned into something else, another format.
Yeah.
And I think it's just an opportunity to have a place to, yeah, to, like you say, put down ideas, because I do a lot of, well, not as much reading as I should be doing, but I do a lot of reading and journaling as well, and writing. Kind of, I try and have a daily-ish practice, just to get ideas out and thoughts,
Yeah.
which I find really helpful. Just with no aim, that's when you're the freest with what you're creating. And yeah, like you say, it can come from a poem or a word or an image, or it's mostly language based, because I mean, I did study English literature, and I've always just loved language, and obviously there's a lot in that, and a lot in poetry about rhythm and sound and movement that isn't solely language based, and it's very musical. But it's a way. I just found that I just need to have different forms of expression that aren't just one medium, because lyrics, I don't know, lyrics for me, they kind of come in different ways, and so I yeah, that it's really hard to pin down how so you get to writing a song. It oftentimes starts in a melody or from a poem or something like that. But sometimes I find it, I mean, more recently I'm finding it's really important to actually keep up the discipline of actually writing long form stuff, because I find that we're just writing so much just on text or on email, or things
form
of
sentences.
little substance.
Yeah,
it's like I feel like an idiot at the moment. Like, I can't write anything of substance, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're finding the same. It's like a challenge to get your brain to work, so I'm almost setting it for myself, not only for my label who are asking for it, but for myself, to have a form of like organizing my thoughts and all the reading and of different references that I'm doing. I mean, that's what's also interesting. It's great to have, you know, curious friends that we share podcasts and we share. You go, oh, what are you listening to at the moment, or what are you reading, and that really keeps me on my toes.
And even just explaining to friends an idea, like,
exactly,
like not only to yourself, but like I definitely have friends and family, you know, that you're able to be like, oh, that I've thought about this idea to get today. This is how I'd apply it. This is the reason behind it. Because and I do think that's what art often is. It's organizing your thoughts and then expressing them through your medium, because I mean, art is literally like a form of understanding the world. It's your lens through which you're experiencing things, and like you make it to understand, basically. I mean, like I feel like it's a form of like processing, kind of in therapy. Like when you make something, like I'll often make a film because I keep being drawn to this one thing I don't understand, or I'm confused by, or want to understand.
Well, exactly, I agree. Yeah, I think it's so much about, like you say, it's something that you can't quite grasp or you can't quite understand. And I mean, that's why I studied literature in the first place, because it was this thing that I found kind of just outside my grasp, when I couldn't quite articulate myself in the way that I wanted to articulate myself. And so I think it's really good to approach things in that way, where you're looking at it from something that's challenging, rather than something that you feel like, oh, I've got that, yeah, great, you know, I'll you know, study something really easy, or I'll write about something I know. That's what's interesting. It's making me, and I'm sure you're finding as well, writing your book, like the act of researching is so, I haven't done it in so long, you know. When you kind of in the
and
world.
Then what too, because it can be overwhelming, like curiosity or learning and all these things, like absorbing information, can be overwhelming. I mean, we obviously know that through the internet too, just like there's so much there, because then we often assume we have to quickly make sense of things, because our world at this moment in time, the age we're living in, is very opinion based, and it's like quick opinion now, like, yes, do you love that, or do you know, dislike it? It's quite like polarizing. But I think in a more mindful, thoughtful way, that you want to bring your research to your practice as an artist, is you don't want to have that quick reactive. You want to really sit with something and let it like incubate and be like, how do I feel about that, and how am I going to bring all those like fragmented bits of research like together?
It's
and like
also
a slow process.
that's what I also kind of like. It's like, it's really nice to get off the internet and get off that vast space where it's kind of everything's a bit overwhelming, and really just go back to like books or something that is, you know, go to a gallery, or even just like, I mean, it's simple, but going for a walk, you know, like I find I get so much inspiration from nature and being outside, and that's, I mean, I miss not being able to go to mountains and things like that, because that's my creative space for me. I know you're big on the surfing, so like
but like, even just like the inability right now to, I mean, the amount of Californian galleries as opposed to London is quite different, but yeah, just like the ability to do that, and even that, knowing that's a privilege too, to have grown up in a city where there is the access to like art from beginning of time to like now, you know, it's like it's pretty amazing that, like, having grown up as we both did in a city where that is pretty accessible. It's definitely,
but like I think the thing that ties it all together is that there is always a starting point. You know, you're not just trying to pluck something out of nowhere. There's always, for your, you know, your shorts and everything that you're doing, like you say, like for a music video it's pinned to a song, or for Medusa's Ankle it was an adaptation of a book. There's the germ of an idea. You'll just kind of come across something and you'll be like, oh, that's caught my attention, and I'm gonna just pin that for a while and see what comes.
Which I think is a nice way, like, if people like that are listening, if you're like stuck on a way to think of something, even just taking like a headline out of a newspaper, like an object in your house, or like there's so many ways to, you can't just start in thin air or a blank canvas. Like you have to like anchor the idea in something real sometimes to start with.
And it can take, I mean, I'm still using poems that I've read, that, you know, we read at school, like however many years ago that was, but you know, it takes a while for stuff to percolate through and to kind of make any kind of sense, and that's what's, I don't know, that's what I think I'm finding so beautiful, is that it's to allow that space for things to come as they do, and not I mean,
I think it's that constant like balance between that like soft and the hard, the like being gentle and patient, but also like being diligent and committing and pushing through. I think it's like that mixture, because we wouldn't have got anything done if we were also just like allowing it patience and time to like evolve and develop. Like, we've both gone out there and like gone for it too, you know, like you know, you also put in so many hours and years like playing music and collaborating with people, and obviously, as you know, that's obviously helped you and given you where you are now. But I think it is like, you know, it needs, what's that quote, like inspiration kind of needs to find you working. I think it is that like idea.
Ages ago.
But it's true. It is like, okay, I need to like, I can't just like wait for it to land on my desk.
No. And I think that's what's so important about having a craft that you can work on and you can build, be it writing, be it musical, be it, you know, if you love cameras and you want to have that as your tool, there needs to be something that you can work on. And then that's when when I'm just playing the piano with no aim, that's when it's the most easy to kind of get into that state of sub kind of conscious thinking, and not be driven by anxiety and thoughts of like limitations and
or it needing to be like shared. Like, you're just doing it for doing it, not like, okay, I need to make a piece now that I'm happy to share with someone tomorrow. Like, it needs to be stuff like, you know, just for me, like, photography is an easier thing. Like, for me, just to take photos, which I enjoy to do, like, is something that's just like a private practice, and it obviously infers my filmmaking, but it's something that is just like a quiet thing that I like to do. But and similar, having that craft of an instrument, or whether that's the craft of, you know, painting, or it's whatever that may be. I think it's like cool when, you know, I think that's why I remember when I played an instrument, like even just the simple act of like scales, like you're not even like, you're just like, okay, I'm just literally doing something. It's
so rewarding,
really that creative, but it is creative. Because it like is like quite like hypnotic. Yeah,
exactly. That's like all pressure is taken off in that moment. You can just do the thing, you know.
Yeah.
You can, like, saxophone scales, god, they must be
Rusty.
yeah,
I have my saxophone somewhere.
Do you?
Yeah, I brought it here, and I don't think I ever played it since. Like, I brought it to sit there. Like, yeah, crazy.
Wow.
Thinking if there's anything else we haven't covered, but we've been chatting away.
What have we covered? I don't know.
I don't. Thanks for those being into our conversation.
There was, yeah, I don't really. There was some burning questions that we covered, I think.
Yeah, some people are asking like how to get into it, which I think we've kind of discovered that it's not that clear and direct. It's not, about
just find friends that you want to make stuff with, basically.
Yeah, find friends. And yeah, if you haven't watched the video, go watch it. It's in, I think I've linked it in my bio. It's like the top link in my biography. And
I want to make something again with you when we're in the same bloody city, country.
Be cool to make something, like, if we're talking about these limitations of like not being in the same space or technology, it'd be cool like to make like a bit each, like I make one piece and you make another piece, and it's like this back and forth of like communication.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
So wait, when's the deadline of what you have to hand in for the book?
So after that. Yeah, after I've done that, I'm like, gotta get back to writing.
Every day, writing.
Yeah. I know yesterday I didn't write anything, and I was like, I just did other stuff, and
it was an input day.
Yeah, I need to write today.
Yeah, but I think also this is the thing. It's especially in this time when there's no sense of routine and it's just like
nothing. Yeah, another day.
You need to give yourself a day off and just a breather. And be kind to yourself. Like you know, baking is your other downtime. And your other passion.
My other passion. I was like, maybe I can bake today.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, not
tonight. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
I got the whole day ahead of me. It's 11 a.m. nearly.
Oh yeah, we're swapped round. Wow.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I hope it was slightly insightful into something.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about this side of life.
Love you. All right, let's speak soon.
Yeah, love you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.